I believe in Stephen Vogt. I believe in Stephen Vogt.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes, Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you so much for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And where we get started, like I was just chanting, I believe in Stephen Vogt. Very catchy little chant that to be fair, that the A's fans came up with. But, you know, Vogt was a Giant in 2019, and guess what else? Stephen Vogt grew up. Somehow I didn't know this, or I forgot this, when he played for the Giants in 2019. He grew up a huge Giants fan. This guy is... We're talking about the managerial opening for the San Francisco Giants. And last time around, when Bruce Bochy was retiring, I'm doing air quotes if you're not watching on YouTube, Stephen Vogt stood out as someone who made sense then. The only issue was he was still playing. And so, of course, he didn't actually make sense. But it was a question like, I don't think he had signed yet. And I think he said at some point like, oh, I want to keep playing. And so then it was like, okay, well, he's off the list. But he's done. He's retired, and he's a coach for the Seattle Mariners, who just so happened to be not in the postseason. So he's someone who could be interviewed sooner rather than later. They're obviously, they say they're going to cast a wide net, as they should, and they're going to interview people who are, whose teams are in the playoffs right now. But anyway, Stephen Vogt, this guy, I just think he is exactly what the Giants are searching for. Are there drawbacks? There could be, and we'll get into those later. But the positives are overwhelming. Number one, like the most important thing, I think, besides the fact that he grew up a Giants fan, and we'll like a big, hardcore, legit Giants fan, we'll get into that a little bit later. But the number one most important thing to me, with all due respect to Gabe Kapler, it's like this is why Kapler was fired, and this is what Stephen Vogt is the opposite of Kapler in this way, in that, as Andrew Baggarly put it in a article that I think came out yesterday about how the Giants need a new identity, Baggarly says, quote, "The Giants' next manager needs to be someone who puts others at ease." And he also says right before this, quote, "Multiple agents who have held face-to-face meetings with Zaidi and Kapler over the past several off seasons have described interactions that were sometimes stilted, sometimes awkward, and generally uneasy." End quote. That's a kiss of death right there. I mean, that I think, like, people say, oh, Kapler was a scapegoat. Oh, he didn't make these rosters. But again, all due respect to Kapler, who I think, like, through no fault of his own, it's just his personality is the opposite of Stephen Vogt's. And I think Kapler's a bright guy. I think he's got a ton of, potential in some kind of role in baseball to be a huge asset to some organization, whether it's the Giants or another organization. But when it comes to like interacting with people and quote putting others at ease, that's not Kapler, and it never was. And I think that was the main problem, and that is what Stephen Vogt is. And so he's more than just that, but that is such an important quality. Stephen Vogt is just like one of the most universally respected and well-liked individuals in recent memory in baseball. He's hilarious. He's, you go, if you have seen it, you'll probably chuckle just thinking about it. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go watch the video of him like imitating a NBA referee. Hilarious, like truly like laugh out loud hilarious is Stephen Vogt. But he's also I was just watching some interviews with him just to kind of do my homework on this episode. Some interviews with him when he was with the A's last year. I mean, this was it. Yeah, 2 years ago, 2022. He had a home run in his last at bat, and just I don't know, just some of the interviews. He's very humble, very personable, just like puts others at ease, and I think that is where Kapler, like the firing wasn't about it's his fault that for the roster, it's more like we need someone who is a leader in that way that Kapler wasn't. He was hands off. I mean, reports about like, oh, they had a team meeting, Tyro Estrada like poured his heart out, and Kapler's response, like I forget who wrote this, but I think it was Baggarly, maybe in this same piece that I'm referring to, who says Kapler's response was he gave a thumbs up and then he walked out of the room. I just think he's uncomfortable, like being that kind of vocal leader, because he probably knows that he doesn't put others at ease, for example. But for Vogt, he is the opposite. And so, I mean, he's also worked. He technically, yes, but played what I meant for some forward, like almost his whole career. He's played for like quote unquote forward thinking organizations, from the Tampa Bay Rays to the Oakland A's to the Giants when Zaidi was here, to Arizona and back to Oakland. And so, and I watched this interview. One of the things that stands out is that he says, I mean, he's been clear. It is his goal to be a manager. Hello? The Giants have an opening. Stephen Vogt wants to be a manager. They need a manager who puts people at ease and is kind of the antithesis of Kapler in that way. I just think it makes too much sense. And so I vote for Stephen Vogt. Coming up in just a minute, we're going to get into more about why Stephen Vogt, I think, is, if not the best fit, one of the short list best fits to be the San Francisco Giants' next manager, but also what are the potential drawbacks? There are some, and we will get into all of that in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you by our very good friends over at FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more, including, hey, how about these Super Bowl odds that I'm just checking out right now? I'm kind of a 49ers casual, I must admit, but hey, did you know the 49ers at plus 550 are tied with the Kansas City Chiefs as Super Bowl favorites over on FanDuel? So if you want to, put a little action on the Niners to win the Super Bowl, there you go. And they are the co-favorites with the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's pretty cool to have a team that good. At least one San Francisco team being that good. Anyway, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Alrighty, Here we go. We are going to get into more about why Stephen Vogt has my vote to be the Giants' next manager. And also, though, why it's not perfect. Is there anything perfect in life? Is there such thing as perfection? Maybe not. So maybe it's a moot point. Anyway, thanks again for making Locked on Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we are going to be getting into the latest with the Giants. There's rumors coming out every day, reports and rumors about, all kinds of things. The managerial search, the intentions for the offseason, the latest. We will give you the latest and greatest on the Giants coming up tomorrow. So, continuing on, Stephen Vogt, when I say he's played for these forward-thinking organizations, I think that he, understands. I think that he's a balance. He's a balance in that he understands, he gets platoons and whatnot. This is a sensitive subject, I recognize. But, platoons exist for a reason, and certain players need to be platooned. If you have a manager who says, give me Jock Peterson and I will just play him against everybody. I mean, honestly, truthfully, I think back to Bruce Bochy, and we can just look at pure numbers. Look at Denard. I mean, no one's actually going to look. I would have to tell you, but I'm not going to pull it up right now. But Denard Span had no business facing left-handed pitching. None. Especially in his tenure with the Giants. He was just dreadful against left-handed pitching. He was also dreadful in center field. And so there was a lack of appreciating the quote-unquote analytics. It's not really analytics. It's just the dude can't hit lefties. And the dude stinks as a defender in center field. All due respect, Denard Span. But it's just facts. Look at these numbers. This is what you do against lefties. This is what you do against righties. Hello. Why on earth are you batting him leadoff every night, no matter what, even if there's a lefty, even if it's Clayton Kershaw on the mound, and then you're losing. And you're losing, because it's not Austin Slater in there instead, and so there's value to the platoons. And so you need a manager who recognizes that. And I think Bochy was willing. I think he showed some willingness to kind of change his ways in 2019, the 1 year that he was under Zaidi. But, I think Stephen Vogt, to get back on topic, he understands all that, but he also understands and connects with players immediately. I think this guy has such a great reputation in the game. He's truly just one of the more likable, personable, funny, and well-respected players in recent memory. So a little background on him. I thought that this was interesting reading up on Wikipedia. First of all, he was a Giants fan because it was the favorite team of his father and grandfather. And his father made his sons participate in at least 2 sports and 2 non-athletic activities in school. Vogt played baseball and basketball, hence the referee impersonations. That is, I promise you, go look it up. Stephen Vogt, referee, and on YouTube, and you'll laugh out loud. But he also joined the Associated Student Body, sung in choir, played trumpet and baritone horn. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Through his sophomore year of high school, and participated in plays and musicals all throughout high school. He also performed in church musicals since his youth and dreamed of performing on Broadway if he could not have a career in baseball. And so that's another thing. The dude is comfortable on stage and in front of a camera. That's and I think Kapler Like, for all his good qualities, he just wasn't. He's tense. He makes other people tense, I think. Just his the way his aura just, and that's what Baggarly describes. I think by the way, Farhan Zaidi is not someone who makes people feel tense and uneasy. So when multiple agents had these face-to-face meetings and described them as stilted, awkward, and uneasy, I'm sorry, but I feel like 95% of that is coming from Kapler. Farhan Zaidi, in terms of presidents of baseball operations, he's about as like loose and easygoing as it gets. And so if you pair the two of them, Vogt could just do all the talking too, and Zaidi could just chime in. But Vogt, you won't find a more like easy to talk to person than Stephen Vogt, which is the opposite, with all due respect to Gabe Kapler. Anyway, continuing on, Vogt grew up a fan of the Giants because it was, or not because, but which was the favorite team of his father and grandfather. His favorite players as a child were Will Clark and Barry Bonds. He also admired Marvin Bernard, who was my favorite player when I was a kid. He admired the underdog story of Marvin Bernard. His family would drive to San Francisco several times a year for Giants games. They attended the final game at Candlestick Park in 2000. So did I. The franchise's first game at Pacific Bell Park. So did I. And every game of the 2002 World Series at Pacific Bell Park. Me too. So I was there. Maybe we were sitting next to each other at one of these games, for all I know. He's like about to be 39. So he's about 5 years older than I am, but nobody cares. The point is not about me, but I just find it interesting, like the parallels, liking Marvin Bernard. I was too young to know his underdog story, but Vogt himself has an underdog story. That's a whole other topic we could get into. It's not like he just had an easy road. He started his career like 0 for 25, which I just learned last night. Like, he didn't have a hit in his first 25 at bats. And he was DFA'd twice. He was released. He spent like 6 seasons in the minors before finally getting an opportunity in his later 20s, maybe like 27. So anyway, it wasn't an easy road for Vogt, and so he earned every bit of what he got. And so he has that perspective, and he was a catcher. And we all, Kruk and Kipe are always talking about how catchers make great managers, and I agree, because they hit, but they also get pitchers because they catch pitchers, and but they also get hitters because they hit, and they just kind of are the field captains. So anyway, I've basically said nothing negative to this point, and I've promised that I'll say, are there any drawbacks? So at this point, I could gush on and on about Stephen Vogt, but let me get into the potential drawbacks. The number one thing is that he just doesn't have experience. Doesn't have managerial experience. Like, he was a player. He was a player for many years, and then he retired. And I think this is his first year as a coach. And all he's doing, I think he's the bullpen coach. That doesn't make any sense. I guess it does. Is he in charge of the relievers? Okay, I need to clarify on that. But he works with the Seattle Mariners as the bullpen, yes, indeed, bullpen coach and quality control coach for the Seattle Mariners. So that's kind of a minor role. Like, I think I'm surprised that he wasn't able to get a larger role in his initial kind of hiring with a team. But quality control coach, I don't know. Does anyone even know what that means? Quality control? Who the heck knows what that even means? It's a thing. Giants have one. Most teams have one. But anyway, it would be like a quick rise to go from that to manager. But is it worth it? Is it worth just taking a shot on a guy who otherwise checks off all the boxes. So the other drawbacks, I mean, I assume he's not bilingual. He's only English speaking. I think in a perfect world, especially with so many of the Giants' potential core future pieces like Marco Luciano and Luis Matos, and I'm probably Camilo Doval being Spanish speaking. It would be nice to have a bilingual, Spanish speaking coach, but at the same time, you could get like a bench coach who speaks multiple languages, and I don't know. I don't think that that's like a deal breaker by any means. But so the number one drawback is the lack of experience. Just the fact that he's, bullpen and quality control coach straight to manager is a big leap. Normally you kind of get promoted, you're like a third base coach, and then you're like a bench coach, and then you become a manager. And so he could follow that route. He very well, may not end up being the manager of the Giants, but he very well could at the same time, based on everything I said earlier. And so those are really, I cannot really think of any other drawbacks other than the lack of experience. I guess you just don't know, like, what kind of manager would he be? We don't really have an idea because he hasn't done it before. And if you're a new manager, you might make mistakes. And I think Zaidi has kind of emphasized that, how when he hired Kapler, or before hiring Kapler, he said that kind of the track record for managers is that they kind of maybe stumble their first time around and then they get fired and then they do better in their second turn. That did not prove to be the case with Kapler, but would he be willing to hire a first-time manager? That's a question. That's a legitimate question. We just learned today, by the way, that Bob Melvin, officially, the Padres or AJ Preller has said that he's returning next year. So scratch him off the list. And so if he's off the list, I don't know what people with managerial experience are really out there who make any sense. Like Buck Showalter? No. Don Mattingly? No. A lot of people have mentioned these names to me, but they're all just hard, firm no's to me. You got to be able to work with this front office. So, like I said in the beginning, I believe in Stephen Vogt, and he is currently my vote. Because Buster Posey doesn't want to manage. I watched an interview with him, I think it was like 5 months ago or maybe a year ago, and they asked him if he wanted to manage, and he was just like, no, I don't. So, and Zaidi in his post-mortem press conference yesterday said that when they get to the end stages of the searching process, that these candidates will meet with the board and people like Greg Johnson and Larry Baer and Buster Posey. And so when he's literally saying these candidates are going to meet with Buster, that makes me strongly believe Buster himself is not a candidate. And so there you have it. So coming up in just a minute, speaking of that post-mortem kind of presser, I just want to touch on a couple of other topics that came out of that, including the outfield defense and the emphasis that Zaidi placed on that, and what do the numbers have to say there for the Giants. So why did he say that, and was it backed up in the numbers, basically? So we'll get into that in just a minute. And before we do, this episode is brought to you by, oh my goodness, my favorite shorts company of all time, Bird Dogs, because not only are their shorts the most comfortable and best looking that I have ever owned, and I'm not just saying that, I have others who have pointed out just upon looking at them, like, where did you get those shorts? Those are the best shorts you've had. Stuff like, I literally have had that happen to me. But also, I've got these amazing add-ons with my that come with my Bird Dogs, like this white tech hat. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. If you're not watching on YouTube, you should watch on YouTube to see this nice hat that I wear every time I go out and play tennis, which I've been doing a lot recently, which is a lot of fun. Get a little exercise that way. And also this Yeti-style tumbler from Bird Dogs, which is extremely high quality and is fantastic. And right now, if you go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb or enter promo code lockedonmlb at checkout, you'll get a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonmlb for a free water bottle at checkout. And forget all the free stuff. You also won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. All right, here we go. Just a couple more things from this post-mortem presser by Farhan Zaidi yesterday. I listened initially on KNBR, like streaming, and they cut it off short. And so the Giants actually on their YouTube channel put out the full like 45-minute interview. And so I rewatched it and there was more. And so that was annoying that KNBR cut it off. But anyway, they did, and there was more. And then outfield defense was emphasized by Farhan Zaidi, and it kind of dawned on me that I hadn't broken down the defense by outfield and infield. And basically what Farhan Zaidi had to say was that their outfield defense was a real problem in 2022, and that they improved in 2023, but it still wasn't up to the standard that they had hoped for. And sure enough, if we look at outfield defense for the Giants in 2023, according to outs above average, they were third worst in baseball at -13. So outfield defense was, in fact, an issue for the Giants. I do want to see, first let me look at 2022. So what did we say? They were at -13 in 2023. And in 2022, the Giants were, drum roll please, -26. So they improved it by, 2 times. It was -26 and it went to -13. So that is improvement, but -13 is still bad. So that is kind of what we hypothesized during the offseason. I said they're going to be better, and I think they'll be. And so overall, they were actually okay defensively, but it mostly and like exclusively perhaps came from the infield. So when we look at 2023, like who are the culprits behind this outfield defense? We know Jock had some time out there. We know that Michael Conforto and Mitch Haniger weren't necessarily the best defenders out there. So when we look at the Giants outfield defense from 2023, what do we find? Well, Mike Yastrzemski, solid. Austin Slater, solid. Bryce Johnson, when he was here, solid. Where are we really getting negative? Well, Luis Matos actually came in last among this group at -5 outs above average. Jock Peterson, -4. Obviously, playing time matters too. Like if you put up -4, I feel like Jock Peterson probably spent significantly less time in the outfield than Matos. I'd have to look that up, but Michael Conforto spent a lot of time in the outfield and was at -3. Mitch Haniger didn't spend much time in the outfield because he was hurt most of the year, and he was also at -3. He spent some time out there, like 60 games or so. Blake Sable at -1. That surprises me a little bit. Like, I mean, I guess he was fine, but he definitely doesn't look super natural out there. But Matos, that's a bit of not really a surprise to me because I've been critical of his defense, like pushing back against those who are saying that he's really good out there. But he's 21 or maybe just turned 22 and athletic, and he can improve. And a lot of it was that he wasn't good enough in center. And this was one of the things that Kapler said that had me saying, like, he shouldn't be saying this kind of thing to the media. Kapler was just like, Matos has not been a good defender in center and blah, blah, blah. He just like was critical of his player to the media, which is something generally that is frowned upon. And Stephen Vogt, I don't think he would ever put it in that language. And so anyway, it is interesting to break it down by by outfield and infield. And just for fun, I do want to take a look at the Giants infield and see where they ranked. I'm trying to like sort through the buttons here to get us set up to see that. Giants were second best in infield defense at plus 28. Plus 28. So it's funny. Like, yeah, I mean, it is worth breaking down. And now I'm gonna have to, now that I see that, I'm gonna have to tell you like who were the culprits there. I know that Thairo Estrada rated really well defensively in the infield, obviously. And by the way, outs above average doesn't even factor in catchers. And so when you talk about second best and then also maybe the best catcher in the league, they're kind of good. Although, Brandon Crawford is retiring, or excuse me, no, I'm not sure that he's retiring. I don't know what he's going to do, but he almost certainly won't be back with the Giants next year. Anyway, this is mostly just led by Thairo Estrada, who came in with plus 19 outs above average, which was one of the very best in Major League Baseball. J.D. Davis was second at plus 6, Brandon Crawford at plus 6, Brett Wisely plus 3, Paul DeYoung plus 2, Marco Luciano 0, so, average in his short time there. Wilmer Flores minus 2. I think that probably comes from his time at third base, because this is just showing the number for all their positions. And I'd have to click on each individual player to break it down. Johan Camargo minus 2, Lamont Wade minus 3, and Casey Schmidt surprisingly minus 3. And I think a lot of that came from his time at shortstop. So anyway, Thairo, and I was beating this drum all offseason to those who were saying Tyro's a bad defender because like defensive runs saved didn't like him last year. Thairo was such a good defender this year. So there, take that. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day, everydayers tomorrow. Just all the latest. And there's always news coming out this time of year. And with the Giants and a managerial search, it's gonna be great, whatever we have going on tomorrow. So thanks again for making us your first listen, and check us out tomorrow. We are Monday through Friday. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like the show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance. And thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.